The perfect list of contents for a first aid kit isn't set in stone. And depending on if you're viewing this video from a tactical or perhaps a home preparation perspective, then you may not feel that this setup is good enough. What I feel is more important though is conveying the challenges of what first aid in a real situation looks like and some of the challenges you may want to keep in mind when selecting which items to put in your own personal kit. Now, the most overlooked aspect in almost every instructional video is recognizing the situation of being injured. An injury is being in a weakened state, dealing with a loss of an ability to function, a loss of one of your hands' dexterity, an inability to stand or walk, a loss of mobility, a loss of fluid, for example, blood or water, and etc. The next most important thing then is individual first aid kits are different for certain roles. For example, a medical doctor has an assistant or paramedics work in pairs, but a personal first aid kit needs to work with you doing everything either on yourself or the injured person. So a person going on a hike may want to pack a splint. A diabetic should consider maybe some sugary supplements or some snacks to pack. And a person in a combat situation may want to have redundancy and perhaps also more durability in the choices of materials and products they're using. For example, metal over plastic. The most important thing to realize is any kit is better than none. Now what you see here are two examples of everyday carry first aid kits. Meaning here on the right is actually my wallet, and this may be too bulky for some people, but depending if you have cargo pockets, this goes in my back pocket and I'm fine with it. And then this one here represents more of a actual just first aid kit, and it could be for more a purse or a backpack. Realize is this kit is very minimalistic, but within inside it there are items that I've become familiar with and the people I've treated are also familiar with. So as a group we are very comfortable with these items and we're very proficient. So you can see, since this actually is my wallet, it's very simple. Now I do have, just for redundant purposes, my business card. And this I have because one, it has CPR instructions on the bottom. And it just helps to be reminded in an intense situation. But it also has the pressure points that you can manipulate to decrease blood flow. And there's a redundancy here too. There's a drawn image. It's pointing towards it on one side, and on the other side there's a red dot. So there's three ways you can kind of see each one. I don't have a tourniquet or any way to stop heavy blood loss. And also I don't have a ton of gauze or something better, maybe like a ShamWow, to really soak up the blood. So slowing the blood flow by raising the limb above the heart and also perhaps pressing on the pressure point is going to help. Now that's going to require the assistance of the individual or then myself. So that means someone's going to have to press, so one hand is taken, either one of mine or perhaps the person, hopefully if they're conscious they can help and reduce the blood flow. But then when it comes to pressing on the wound, you can see this kit is very simple. Okay, so here we have non-stick pads. I carry a total of 3, and these are 3x4. It's very important to get non-stick, and what they look like is kind of like we see on the Band-Aid. And I've actually used this one and cut down the size, but you can see it looks like that. You can create a Band-Aid in different sizes, up to 3x4, but it's going to generally soak up very minor amounts of blood, and you have to maybe replace them. But the main important thing is it doesn't stick, so that when you have to remove it and clean that dressing, you're not pulling off the scab and the clotted blood. I have 2 in the plastic bag just for general water resistance, because this kit isn't really at that point, but if I am caught in the rain, I would like to at least still have my gauze pads work. But one is outside for quick access. And with one hand, I can still use this, bite on it, tear it open, and get the pad. So if I have to apply pressure, I can use this one hand, get it open and put it on and then hold it. Now the next thing here is though, I also have iodine. So preferably I would like to have a formal way of washing the wound. Hopefully I have a water bottle on me, or there's a source of water, or it'd be nice to have all kind of different wound washes. But in such a compact package, what is convenient, what's going to allow me to actually carry it, the thing that I'm actually willing to take with me every day, is these little portable iodine pads. Now these, unfortunately, they do, how I say, they do kind of split on their own, and they start to leak. So that's why they're in this specific one. And overall, though, they come from different sites. If you want to get this brand, you can. It comes in a quite large box, large quantity. But you know, they will stain, but overall it's basically iodine in a very miniature towelette form. Perhaps the most important aspect here now is the final last two items. And you can see I didn't cover mini. Now wound seal is essentially what we see in products like Quick Clot. Now if you ever seen a normal Quick Clot, it actually looks like this. And you know, we always see this, they have combat versions, but it's essentially the same. And it looks like that. It's a gauze pad full of these little beads. And it's also something that once you apply, because it's not a non-stick and the beads adhere to the wound, you get this thing stuck on your wound. And they always say you need to go, don't remove it until you go seek medical attention. There are these miniature versions of these now, where there's a little bit of that clotting agent, but this is only a 1x1, and it's also wrapped in paper. So it won't, for example, stop a nosebleed like it claims. Because I forget those frequently with the dry weather out here and wearing the mask from knife making. So these are very ineffective. First, that they're small, and two, they don't really clot that well. But again, a similar concept to the Quick Clot in a more minimalistic form. Because I've tried that. I've tried cutting open the Quick Clot packet you've seen, and perhaps just using a little bit on a wound. Forgoing the actual gauze, but you know, perhaps you could wrap it bare. You could take paper tape, which is, you know, a very essential part to most first aid kits, because it breathes, it won't, you know, stick very tightly to the wound, and you can tear it very easily. And I've tried that where then I ground, you can see on my own the Quick Clot pellets to turn into a powder. That concept then eventually became wound seal. And I think that's very interesting, because these unorthodox things may seem ridiculous, you know, such an idea, but I think the medical industry sees the tactical side, the demand from consumers for something more, I say, portable, more useful, more minimalistic, and so what you get is wound seal. Now this wound seal you can see has been used. Wound seal typically comes in a packet like this. It's a little pricey. I think they're close to almost $8, something like that. And they usually have a little bit of air in them. Their air is tight. But there's a little tear here. And that little bit, eventually, if you press on this, like it is in my wallet, the air will come out. So they are not perfectly airtight. But now this gets to where these have been open for about now 2.5 months. I used this on someone, obviously, and you know, it's still fine. I used it later recently, and it still works. I can't say they last open longer than 2 months. And I can't say depending on the humidity, but overall, they have lasted, they still function, and it sifts out very much like a packet of sugar or a packet of powdered something. The issue here is that, one, if you pour it directly into a wound, a lot of it's hard to control. So there's a couple of techniques. One might be to pour it into your hand, then dab the small wound, for example, cut your finger onto that, and that'll do it. If you have a nosebleed, you could dab your finger and then stick it up your nose. Or you could even take a piece of tissue, sprinkle a little bit of the wound seal on the tissue, and plug your nose. That'll get to stop. And it also works to take this non-stick pad, put some wound seal on it, and then cover your wound. Obviously, the technique would be, rather than putting it on and then doing that and then pouring all the wound seal off, it'd be to pour it onto this non-stick pad, then put the wound over. The reason why I have new ones, but I also have one you can see perfectly cut and sealed, is again that one-hand use. It's very clunky when someone's hurt, that you pull out this detailed first aid kit, unwrap things, and you're trying to like slowly help them, and they're in discomfort, and in some cases time is of the essence. So where this happens now is this specific little label, which I'm just using these little post-its. It's so that I can, with this hand, bite this, pull it off, and then open it up, and then sprinkling it. And essentially, This is like an improvised, it's an improvised many different things. It can be basically an instantaneous band-aid. If it's a small wound, it'll just stop it from bleeding and you'll be fine. Put a little iodine if you want, sprinkle it on, and then you can just wrap it with the final step. So I like that it has the ability to go beyond its scope, and it has multiple functions. Now the non-stick pads, now before I move on, the non-stick pads, you can see there's CVS brand and there's Johnson & Johnson. Overall, both are the same except for the CVS brands are made in the US. Now, the most important aspect of this kit is this self-grip bandaging. And you can see here, this one is by Top Care, and it's official athletic tape of the USA Triathlon. And here we have the hurt-free Johnson & Johnson brand. And you can see that they come in quite a different variety of sizes, widths. The best one here is not actually Top Care. The most resilient, the most grippy is actually some CVS generic brand, which is slightly darker. And it's right here actually, in this kit. And the stickiness is very extreme. You really have to pull, like you have to actually give it a really nice tug. The Johnson & Johnson one is very weak. You have to wrap it many times. It's just more stretchy. I don't really actually like it at all. This Top Care one is kind of good. It's in the middle. It's sticky enough, but it's not very thick. It's very thin, so you might have to wrap it more than once. But it also, that's good because then when you're constantly changing the wound, you're not really having to tug on anything. And while enough, it still provides enough support. But you can see here, I have to really press down. Now with this stuff, it's really good because this stuff, if you get it wet, it won't stick. If there's a little bit of bleeding and the wound still hasn't, it stops it, but there's still a little bit of blood, you can wrap it and it'll still probably stick. Go around a couple times and the fresh dry material will stick upon itself and you'll be good to go. If you completely submerge it like I did this piece and you let it dry, it functions again brand new. So this stuff is really good for, I would say, a lot of purposes. Now with this specific athletic tape, you can see here I have one piece on the outside that's short. That is for small injuries. So rather than have a band-aid, I would just wrap this around a small wound. Then I have here the equivalent of this here. You can see minimum unstretched length is 70 inches. So you have a lot of bandage wrap. And this is good because since I don't have a splint, if you have the skill and knowledge of how to wrap any type of sprain or injury like that, a mobility injury, then I have a couple videos uploaded on that. This is essential. This is great for any type of, even when it just comes to a cut perhaps on the foot and you need to support it, or you need to keep that skin, you need some kind of pressure, this will provide that to a decent degree. And it's, like I said, it's very functional. It breathes. And the goal here is all one-handed use. And then you can see a kind of pre-setup. It's ready to go. I've set up one wound seal, one gauze pad, and this smaller bandage so that some things don't take too long, but everything is meant for easy access. And then a little flasher here with a ranger band on it so it doesn't slip out, but also if I pull it out, I can bite on it and aim the light. And it's just a Phoenix EO1, a nice, nothing's fancy, but it's reliable, more reliable than the LD version. Now as I move on to the more, I say, inclusive kit, again, these kits don't have everything.